Editing Dale here. I just wanted to apologise for the sound quality on this video. I think there's a problem with my mic connection, so I will look into that because that's been a couple of videos now. Also, obviously, I am not a financial advisor. Anyone watching YouTube's for financial advice probably needs more help than I can provide. I just wanted to share the story about how I fund luxury, and hopefully that's helpful for you. Cheers. Welcome to you, my name's Dayle and this is Dayle's Addiction. This is a video I have been meaning to film for some time, and after Connor and I recently did our collab video about Let's Get Real, I thought I would expand on my thoughts around how we afford luxury, because we approach that in a comical way in that video, but I actually want to talk about the real way that I afford luxury. There's kind of 5 key things that I do to afford luxury, but there's some context that sits behind that I think is super important. And I want to get real with you because I think a lot of people tippy-toe around this situation, and some of the tips that they offer are just as useful as sending an email instead of posting a letter. They're just not helpful. So the first kind of assumption that comes up is that you need to be wealthy to afford luxury. Now, I am not saying that you have to be or you need to be wealthy to afford luxury, but here in Australia, wealth is defined as per the following. Now, if you think about annual wages, and this was taken 3 years ago in the census, if you were earning $2.8 million a year, you're in the top 0.1% of wealthy Australians, okay? 0.1%. If you're earning $750,000, you're in the top 1%. Let me take that down. If you're earning $158,000, you're in the top 10%. So I think that it's fair to say that based on that figure, I'm wealthy. And it's a really humbling thing to say that, and it's also a true fact. And that's just me, that's not me and my husband. And I think that there are a lot of people kidding themselves in terms of saying that they're not wealthy, because when they think of wealth, they think of the Queen, or when they think of wealth, they think of the Kardashians. Wealth is relative to the place where you live and the living standards, and we're all citizens of this earth, and if we can't look in the mirror and look at the facts when it comes to our country and acknowledge where we sit in the wealth ladder, if you want to call it that, then we've got some problems. So I want to acknowledge first and foremost that, by Australian standards, I'm in the top 10%, okay? So that's important to know. The other things that are important to know contextually is I'm approaching my 41st birthday. I didn't start buying luxury till I was 30. Would I have bought luxury before 30? I could have afforded it, but I wasn't in a situation where that was something that me and my significant other were prioritizing. We were prioritizing buying a house, buying land, building a house, paying for things in cash. He was not somebody who ever wanted to borrow unnecessarily. And, I learned a lot from that. As frustrating as it was, it put me in good stead later in life to be able to make decisions that wouldn't have me, paying a debt that might cost me 10 or 20% more in the long run, just because I had to have something right now. So, I didn't really start till I was 30, and I probably got pretty serious about buying luxury when I was 37, 38. So before that, it was something that perhaps I bought very occasionally. So I've been on YouTube for a year, right? So that's also relative too, in terms of as the addiction has flourished. Yes, I've bought more, but we've also been in a situation for the past couple of years whereby I haven't done the other things that I would spend money on. So household renovations and overseas holidays and travelling a lot more for personal reasons. So I'm talking about short weekends away, both interstate and intrastate, and not really worrying about what, or how often we were travelling, because there were things happening. There were events, parties, family get-togethers and those sorts of things. So that's where we were spending our money. So that context, I think, is super important. Also, what is important to acknowledge, before I get into my 5 things that help me afford luxury, is that from the years 19 to 30, I lived in very regional areas where there was not really much shopping to be done, and I was working in an industry where I earned quite a high wage for what I did compared to what people in cities and metropolitan areas would have been paid. Therefore, you were subsidised for living in those areas because they're pretty hard to attract people to be quite honest. And as a result of that, you receive more opportunity to do more senior work, more project work to advance your career, build your network, and additionally increase your earning capacity. And when you've got nothing to spend it on, guess where it goes? In the bank. So I don't have children of my own. I have 3 stepchildren, and they're not cheap, by the way, but they are all grown adults, right? And that's a little dig at them if they happen to be watching, right? My husband is not cheap either. None of us are actually cheap. I don't have young children, so I haven't had to, put kids through school and, just pay for a lifestyle that includes children. Now, even though I came into my stepkids' life when they were from 11 to 16, and there were, significant expenses associated with being a part of their life and celebrating significant milestones for them, I know that that's nothing compared to people who have children from babies or small children right up until they're independent. So that's also important to note. In saying that, I feel like it's something that you need to clarify, even though you shouldn't. That, I chose not to have children up until my early 30s. And then I chose to have children and I couldn't. And I'm not going to let the fact that that didn't happen affect how I live my life today. And it is not an excuse or a reason or a justification as to why I can afford luxury, but I think it's certainly relevant. And the reason I give you all that context is because I think there are so many people that I chat to in my DMs who just watch YouTube and think, how do you do it? How can I do it? I've got all these responsibilities. I can't see an end in sight. When will it be my time? And my answer is, well, if you had a life like mine, if you'd made choices like mine, maybe you might be, more willing to spend your disposable income the way that I do. But the reality is we all have different lives and we all make different choices and have different priorities at different times, and that's okay. And one of the worst things we can do is compare ourselves to others. So, with that massive piece of context in mind, I want to share with you the 5 real things that I do to save money for luxury. Now, these are things that I do, and they don't involve not having coffees out. They don't involve going to Costco and going shopping. They don't involve, filling up on Cheap Tuesday at the fuel station. They don't involve any of those things. They're pretty significant things that help. So the first one is, I remember watching a television interview, and I cannot remember her name. I should have looked it up before this video, but I just wrote some quick notes. Interviewing a woman, and she's got a website called Sugar Mama TV, and she came up with this concept of the $1,000 project. And in short, paraphrasing, she was I think a single mother. She was in low-income work and she wanted to get ahead in life, and so she set herself a $1,000 target. She would look to create additional income by either working a second job, creating a side hustle, or selling things until she would get to this $1,000 target. And then when she got to the $1,000, she would, recognize that success. And the psychology of seeing the momentum building in those small amounts was really motivating for her. And I remember watching that interview and going, I could totally do that. And I think anybody could do this. If you think about all the ways that you could create $1,000, okay? Now, you might choose to do it by going without coffee and banking that money into your $1,000 project. You might choose not to go out for your Friday night dinner and put the money you would have spent into your $1,000 project. Or you might take on a second job or do some consulting work. You might not have, somebody help you out with yard work or cleaning. You might do it yourself and bank that money. You might sell some things, Facebook Marketplace, Gumtree. You could Airtasker, you could Uber, all sorts of things. You could YouTube, right? But this concept of building up $1,000 amounts, I think is really relevant when it comes to luxury, because $5 in here and there just doesn't get you far enough, quick enough. And as we know, price increases come along all the time. And it's really demotivating for people I know when they get so close to being able to afford their dream bag and then the prices increase. And they're not small increases, they're $300, $400. I understand that that's tough. So I think the $1,000 project is my first thing that I do to help fund luxury. The second thing I do is I say yes to additional work. Now, granted, I work for myself, but I have some constraints around that because I know a lot of people that just work a lot because they're worried there won't be any work tomorrow. And they're pretty unhappy, they're pretty unhealthy, and they're not fulfilled. And it doesn't matter how much money they have in their bank, they are still worried that they'll never have enough. So I was pretty clear around putting boundaries in terms of what I wanted to do. But when there are things that I want, and when there is really great work around for great clients, I will say yes to working on days that I don't usually work. I try and keep Fridays free. Fridays are kind of sacrosanct. Fridays used to be a day where if my husband could get home earlier from working away, we would get that day together. So it's very rare that I'll say yes to a Friday, but I will take on additional work, or I'll figure out how to do additional work in order to, get some extra dollars into the account to fund this addiction of mine. The third thing that I do to fund luxury is if there is a bag, and for me, I'm a big seasonal bag fan, right? So if there's a bag that I love and I want it, I don't want to pay resellers for it at a premium. Personal shoppers to me are different to resellers in that they charge a personal shopping fee rather than a premium for just being able to snag a hard to find item, okay? So I'm not putting personal shoppers in the same category. But what I would do is I would buy it. So if it's a seasonal thing, I'll buy it and then I'll sell something else to recoup those funds. And I've done that a few times, and specific examples that come to mind would be when I bought my Chanel mini rectangular, and I had just bought a little Tiffany blue mini rectangular and it wasn't working for me. In that moment, I got a quote for that bag from the Purse Fair whilst I was in the Chanel boutique, and before the Purse Fair were as busy as they are now, because you will not get a quote that quickly now. And I better hurry up, my battery's going low. They gave me a quote and I went, bang, okay, I know what I can expect for that bag. So I purchased the little black mini rectangular. I'll show you. These things were so hard to come by, still are to some extent. So I purchased this and then I shipped off my little Tiffany blue one and got the money, 4 weeks later. So that's another way that I do it. Obviously have savings. So this kind of fits into all of the same category, right? To buy things, okay, you can use whatever format suits you. If you want to use savings, use savings. If you want to use credit cards, use credit cards. And if you just have additional disposable income, use that. Whatever way you want to fund it. That's up to you. The way that I do it, though, is I always try and make sure that I'm not biting into funds that are going to that are important for other things that I want to do. Number 4, and this one probably won't be relevant after this year, is didn't take anywhere near the number of small breaks and holidays in 2020 and 2021, and that freed up quite a significant amount of income. And I'm not apologising or justifying that, and I think that might change once we get to travel again. Because the real tension is going to be working enough to afford to travel, and then travelling instead of buying things, right? So it's a different kind of priority. So that's been a significant factor in my purchasing over the last year and a half, okay? And I'm sure it has been for many people as well. And then finally, my 5th tip is wherever you can, pay cash. And when I say cash, I don't necessarily mean cold hard, but I do mean get a cash price on things. And that means that you've got to wait till you've got the cash, right? Because cash is bargaining power. I mean, we just got our house painted. We could pay a price that was, on the books, what have you, or we could pay a cash price. And the savings were around $3,000 or $4,000. Like, that's a handbag, okay? But we chose not to do that in this instance. But you could do that. It's the same with buying anything significant. If you're buying white goods, if you're buying furniture, if you're buying motor vehicles, if you're able to say, I don't need credit, I want it now, and I want the best price you can give me, and I can hand it over, you are going to save bulk coin. And then they can go back into your $1,000 project. Now, I realise that that's a privileged position to come from, to be able to pay for things up front with cash, right? And you can't do that unless you've done the other things. And the other things help put money in the bank account so that you can do that. So it is true, unfortunately, that if you're in a situation where you're not having a lot of disposable income, or you don't have a lot of savings, it's really hard to take advantage of those sorts of ways of doing business when you don't have the money in the first place. And so that is a disadvantage, and I do recognise that, which is why it's item number 5, because you can't do that until you've done the other things. So they're my 5 kind of critical things. I hope that is helpful, and it puts some meaning around, a different perspective, I guess. I hope a really honest and authentic perspective around some of the ways in which we make money and spend money and prioritize spending, and how that relates to luxury, because I feel like, particularly in the luxury community, this kind of conversation is really, it's not the whole story. I'm not going to say it's dishonest, but it's not the whole story. According to Credit Suisse, an article that I found online, in Australia, if you have a combined income, investments, personal assets of US 1 million or 1.3 million Australian dollars, you're classified as wealthy. Okay, so something to think about. So that's your combined income, your home, your personal assets, things that are in your savings account, your superannuation. If it's at 1 million US or 1.3 million Australian dollars, all those things combined, then you are wealthy. So that's really important to know. That's net worth. The top 10% of wealthy people in the United States are earning 109,000 US dollars a year. So again, I know that that's not small money, but I don't think it's as much as most people think it is in terms of what wealthy looks like. So I hope I've given you some context around how I fund luxury, some things to think about in terms of what wealthy actually is, because I was really surprised, and that's why I wanted to make this video, because I think we dance around it a little bit. So you might actually be wealthy and still not spending money on luxury because you have other priorities, and I think that that's fantastic, and I think, you know, only you can decide what's best for you and your family. So I know this was a bit of a serious topic, but something I have been thinking about for quite a while. I'm really interested to know what your thoughts are on this matter, and please hit me up in the comments below. I'd love to engage with you there. If you've liked this video, please give me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. I put out videos on Wednesdays and Sundays, so I will see you next time. Bye.